Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar, which is all about exploring how the multisensory approach can be used to enhance your RE teaching. I will be presenting to you today, and here's a little bit about me. I'm known as Gerri, and I'm the Jigsaw Regional Advisor for the North East and Yorkshire and the Humber. My background's in primary education. I've had a number of roles throughout my career, most importantly that of class teacher, but I've also been RE lead, collective worship lead, Senko and deputy head. Here's an overview of what we will cover in our webinar today. Firstly, we are going to define what we mean by a multisensory approach and look at some useful research that's been undertaken which advocates for its use. Then we will focus on the benefits that using this approach in RE can bring to the children, and we look at the special benefits that it brings to children with SEND. And finally, we will look at ways that you can incorporate the multisensory approach into some of the Jigsaw RE inquiries, which will hopefully inspire you to give this a go in other worldviews that you may be teaching. So, what is the multisensory approach? Well, put simply, it's a teaching method that engages multiple senses to enhance learning. It includes seeing, hearing, touching, tasting and moving. However, the approach is not limited solely to these senses and may include others, including the vestibular sense. This sense helps with balance and spatial awareness, and emotional and social sensory experiences. So that's choosing activities that involve interpreting others' emotions and social cues that can help to engage children's emotional intelligence and develop social awareness and empathy. It's not a new approach. It has been used since the early 20th century, particularly in the work of Dr. Maria Montessori. The Montessori approach, developed by her, is an educational philosophy and method which focuses on fostering children's natural curiosity, independence and love of learning through a carefully prepared environment and individualized instruction. Central to this is learning by doing. Children engage with specially designed hands-on materials that engage many senses and that help them to understand abstract concepts through concrete experiences. As well as all the research around the Montessori philosophy, there's a significant body of recent, post-2020 research around the role of multisensory approach in primary education. And I'm just going to give a brief overview of some of the more significant ones, and you may wish to do your own research on the approach. I think it's good to establish that the multisensory approach is not the theory of learning styles, which suggests that people learn best when taught in a specific mode. These are classified usually as visual, auditory and kinesthetic, but rather it's a teaching method, as mentioned earlier, which seeks to embed learning by engaging multiple senses. There have been several studies which have supported the theory that a multisensory approach leads to improved retention and recall. For example, research by Lim and Young in 2021 showed that multisensory learning environments promote stronger connections in the brain's neural networks, allowing children to process and retain information better. By activating various sensory pathways, so visual, auditory, tactile, children experience a richer and more holistic learning process, which enhances their understanding of complex concepts. The multisensory approach has also been effective in tackling the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on learning. Many students were not engaged by remote learning with its emphasis on solely auditory or visual instruction, and this increased the need for innovative and engaging learning techniques when school gradually began to return to some degree of normality. A 2020 study by Bennett, Woodward and Dawes found that incorporating multisensory techniques like interactive activities, visuals and hands-on tasks into online and classroom settings increased the children's engagement and reduced cognitive overload. This meant that children could process information more easily because of the stronger connections in the brain's neural network. Several post-2020 studies have emphasized the role of emotions and social interaction in learning, particularly after the isolation experience during the pandemic. The Carnegie Mellon research undertaken in 2021 advocated for the use of active learning methods, which include multisensory approaches. Their findings showed that hands-on interactive learning, where students engage multiple senses, not only improves academic performance, but also supports emotional and social development. And I think this research was really interesting in the use of its terminology. They described hands-on as learning by doing, minds-on as engaging critical thinking, and hearts-on as involving emotional and social components that foster deeper learning and personal connection. This research explored how active learning through physical interaction, cognitive engagement, and emotional connection enhances the effectiveness of education. And I think this is really relevant for RE learning in our classrooms today. So the research seems to suggest that the multisensory approach is a method worth exploring. And I think it's useful to try and unpick what some of the benefits of using this approach are. So, in terms of development and learning in RE, the multisensory approach contributes to all of the following that you can see on the screen. I'm just going to highlight one or two. So, this approach can foster a deeper understanding of abstract concepts. I think that many RE teachers would agree that some of the concepts that we present to the children can be abstract and difficult to understand. So using a multisensory approach can help the children to form a bridge into the world of the worldview. A multisensory approach can make these ideas more tangible by engaging multiple senses. For example, when we're teaching about sacred spaces or places of worship, children can explore these concepts perhaps by listening to recordings of prayers or chants, viewing images or videos of rituals or ceremonies being performed inside these spaces, and smelling incense or perfumed oil that may be used in the places of worship. This can link to engagement with rituals and tradition within worldviews, since many worldviews often involve ritual, symbols, and sensory elements like music, incense, and candles. A multisensory approach in RE allows children to experience these elements directly, and as a result of that, there may be a greater development of empathy and emotional connection. So smelling the incense or oil and listening to chanting or sacred songs or ceremonies can evoke a sense of reverence or calm, allowing children to emotionally connect with the experience. And this may mean that children can then reflect more deeply on the experience and see if it resonates with their own worldview or changes something in how they wish to live their lives. So, for example, a multisensory approach to the teaching of the Good Samaritan, where children have perhaps experienced what it might feel like to have oil poured onto their skin and then experience the feeling of having a bandage applied, might enable them to reflect more deeply on the values of care and compassion. I think it's worth mentioning here that the multisensory approach to teaching RE benefits all children. However, it is especially beneficial to children with SEND in mainstream schools. It's something that I used in my own practice when I was teaching, and it's also something I was interested in my role as SENCO. For me, this approach helps greatly with the 3 areas you can see on screen now. For anyone teaching in a primary school, I think there's general agreement that the scale and number of children with SEND in mainstream schools has really increased. The statistics also bear this out. Data from the Department for Education shows that as of 2023, 18.4% of all pupils are identified as having special educational needs. This includes about 1.67 million children. Of these, approximately 4.8% have an education, health and care plan, while 13.6% are on SEND support, meaning they receive additional assistance without an EHCP. In primary schools, there's been a 16% increase in the number of children with an EHCP in mainstream settings since 2023. The Association of School and College Leaders, so that's ASCL, reported that the most common identified needs are related to speech, language and communication issues. For children with SEND, especially those with communication difficulties, a multisensory approach can provide alternative ways to express understanding and engage with worldview's content. For instance, using gesture-based rituals or movements when learning about worldviews promotes inclusive participation, even if verbal communication is challenging. If sensory inputs are used to supplement learning, then this reduces the reliance on verbal and written instruction, which may be overwhelming for some children with SEND. Visuals, sounds, and tactile materials that can be manipulated can help to spread the cognitive load, making concepts found in worldviews teaching more manageable and less stressful to process. As many of us know from our classroom experience, children with SEND can struggle with traditional learning environments that rely heavily on listening and reading. A multisensory approach involves them in hands-on activities, making RE lessons in particular more engaging and accessible, especially if you plan an activity as part of the Let Me Learn section, which is not reliant on reading or writing. So, for example, making and decorating a clay Diwali lamp when looking at Sanatana Dharma, using collage materials to create the picture of Jesus healing the paralyzed man in the 7 to 9 Christianity unit, cutting up apples and dipping them in honey if you're looking at the Jewish festival of Rosh Hashanah in the enquiry in 5 to 7, or manipulating a word bank to make a poem about what motivates a humanist in the age 7 to 9 enquiry, even better if you add sound effects. Activities like these are great for all children, especially those with SEND, because they encourage active participation, promote inclusivity, and increase engagement. I think it's fair to say that inclusion has become an even stronger focus in education post-2020, and with that has come a heightened awareness of neurodiversity. Research from Chen and McGeorge in 2022 demonstrated that multisensory approaches benefit not only neurotypical learners, but also children with learning difficulties like dyslexia, ADHD, and autism. This research was founded primarily on teaching reading to children with dyslexia, and it found that these children improved their reading skills significantly when learning to read through a combination of seeing letters, hearing sounds, and tracing letters. Children who are neurodiverse bring unique perspectives and ways of learning, and their needs permeate the entire curriculum, including RE, so Chen and McGeorge's research adds more weight to the benefits of using the multisensory approach. Okay, so far we have clarified what we mean by a multisensory approach, we've looked at some research, and we've established the benefits of the multisensory approach for all children, including those children with SEND. Now let's take a look at how you might embed multisensory approaches into some of the Jigsaw RE enquiries available on our portal. Now, within the time frame of this webinar, it's not feasible to look at every worldview, so we're going to focus on the multisensory approach within a story from Christianity, religious practice from Sanatana Dharma, and core beliefs from the non-religious worldview of humanism. Let's take a look at one of the age 7 to 9 Christianity enquiries from Spring 1, entitled "Could Jesus Heal People? Did he perform miracles, or was there some other explanation?" This enquiry focuses on 3 healing miracles of Jesus, and we're going to look at piece 3, the healing of the blind man from the Gospel of St. John, found in chapter 9. So, how can we use the material we already have in piece 3 and make it multisensory? So here is where I would think about the story that I would be telling the children and be alert to any places in the story that I could support with a sensory input. I jot them down on a post-it note and then make my choices after that initial thought gathering, bearing in mind any needs that the children have and any school policies that I need to be mindful of, such as the health and safety policy. I think the first thing to notice is that this healing miracle takes place outdoors, so that's where I would set my lesson, outdoors, on the playground, the school field, in the school garden, any outdoor space that you have. immediately the experience becomes multisensory. The sound of the wind in the trees, the feel of the wind in your hair, the sound of traffic, the look and the smell of the flowers, the roughness of the tree bark to the touch. There are many opportunities for multisensory experience in the outdoors. The children could be invited to wonder what sounds, smells and touches the blind man might have experienced as he sat there begging, and how these are similar to or different from the experiences that they have just had. Next, I would consider that there are two sensory elements, if you like, to this story. One, Jesus made a mud paste with saliva and earth or soil, and two, he told the man to wash in the pool of Siloam. So first, the children could carefully inhale the earthy, damp smell of compost and then make a paste using saliva manufactured from cornstarch or flour mixed with water, about 2 tablespoons of flour or cornstarch to 1/4 cup of water, and you can add washing up liquid to add a slippery texture like real saliva. Compost can be added and mixed to form a paste, and whilst I wouldn't advocate the children daubing this on each other's eyes, they could daub the paste onto a doll or a picture of a face to experience what that action feels like on their thumbs. Just a reminder to make sure that children wash their hands thoroughly and remind them not to eat the paste or to put it near their mouths. The man was told to wash in the pool of Siloam, so this gives great scope for activities around water. The children could be blindfolded and explore different textures and temperatures of water, so warm, cold, with ice, to help them understand what it might feel like to be blind and then experience the sensation of water. Building in these multisensory experiences adds to the children's experience of the story and leads nicely into the character puppets activity already provided in the enquiry. Let's move on now to looking at how the multisensory approach can enrich enquiries about non-religious worldviews. Here we're looking at age 5 to 7, Humanism, Enquiry 1, What do humanists believe? And we're focusing on piece 3. This enquiry is the children's first experience of the worldview of humanism in Jigsaw, and in line with all other worldviews, there's a consideration of the beliefs that underpin the worldview. The aim here is to ensure the children understand that as a non-religious worldview, a humanist would feel that the answers to some of the big questions lie with humanity to solve, as they would not believe help is going to come from an outside source or deity. The children are asked to consider 3 things that humanists believe and how this might affect their actions. And over the lesson, the children discover that these 3 things are: the world is a natural place, we should ask questions and look for evidence to understand it. We should all be free to find out what makes us happy, and we should be kind to other people, animals, and the planet. So, if I was looking to enhance this enquiry with a multisensory approach, for me the idea of the natural world seems to be the thread that it's stitching it all together. I would weave all 3 of those beliefs into a nature walk. On the walk, I would be encouraging the children to touch leaves, feel the texture of tree bark, and smell the flowers, whilst discussing how humanists believe that caring for nature is part of their responsibility because it's the only world they have. This also helps introduce the idea of making the world a better place. Have the children sit quietly for a few minutes to focus on the sounds around them, such as birds chirping, leaves rustling, or water flowing. Ask them to describe what they heard and why they think those sounds exist. This encourages the children to be curious and think about the natural processes behind what they hear, reflecting the humanist idea of looking for explanations in the natural world. I would give each child a small food bag and invite them to collect some examples of natural objects like leaves, flowers, feathers, and to find a smooth rock. And back in the classroom, I'd provide them with glue, paper, and paints, and let the children create a collage using their collection, representing the calmness and happiness they felt at being outdoors in the natural world. Then I would set up a display with a questions jar like the one you can see on the screen and remind the children of our discussion about the sounds we'd heard on our nature walk. I'd encourage the children to drop in questions about things they observed in nature, like why do the trees lose their leaves, or how do rainbows form? And each day I would pull out a question and discuss it with the children together, looking for evidence and answers in videos and in books. Then, using the smooth stones we had found on our walk, I'd make kindness stones with the children. And there's an example on the screen. So here the children decorate the rocks with kind words or pictures of things that make them happy. These can be placed around the school or neighbourhood for others to find, highlighting kindness towards others by creating small surprises that can brighten someone's day. It also encourages the children to think about how their actions can positively impact people around them. The stones activity could also form part of the activity sheet for the lesson. You may wish the children to write or draw on their stones actions which fulfill the 3 beliefs of humanists. Let's look now at the age 9 to 12 Sanatana Dharma Enquiry 1 on religious practice. What is the best way for a Sanatani to show commitment to God? This enquiry in piece 2 looks at the puja tray, a central element in many Sanatanis' practice of prayer and worship, and it's a great way to show how using religious artifacts can form part of a multisensory approach. It's worth visiting your local religious resources centre for artifacts. We are very lucky in the Northeast with 2 resources centres, and the artifacts there can help you hugely with the multisensory approach. So before we look at how a multisensory approach can enhance this inquiry, I'd like to highlight this really interesting article by Roger Hoban called "Don't Let the Murty Get Dirty, The Uses and Abuses of Religious Artifacts." You can access this in the British Journal of Religious Education. And in it, Roger Hoban highlights the risk of religious artifacts being misused or misrepresented in classroom settings, particularly if the children fail to grasp their sacred significance. When sacred items such as the murti are treated merely as props or teaching aids without appropriate reverence, this can lead to cultural or spiritual disrespect. And Homan goes on to warn that in some classrooms, children might mishandle these objects out of curiosity or immaturity. And this casual treatment risks trivializing the artifact's spiritual importance. Hoban emphasizes that by presenting these artifacts in a more distinguished manner, we model the behavior that we expect, meaning that teachers should introduce religious artifacts with an air of reverence to instill in children the importance of treating them with respect. So let's see how we can be mindful of the sentiments in this article and provide a wonderful multisensory experience for the children, which will deepen their learning about the worldview of Sanatana Dharma. The Jigsaw inquiry in the Let Me Learn section acknowledges that the puja tray is designed to appeal to all the senses, and it lists what the senses are and the activity that stimulates them. So with the puja tray, I would make sure I was handling each object reverently so that the children could see that this was the expectation and could mirror it if they were to hold the objects. So I thought it might be useful to you to see what that could look like. So here's a short video clip of me using artifacts to set up a home shrine, using the puja tray and discussing the senses that are brought into play. Sanatanis believe in one supreme God called Brahman. Brahman is the supreme spirit, and the other gods and goddesses are different representations of Brahman. Brahman is the foundation of all life. Some important gods are Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesha, and Lakshmi. Sanatanis worship one or more of the deities in their homes or in a temple. They are all seen as different aspects of Brahman, the supreme God. This worship is called puja. Puja is performed daily, usually in the early morning. It is performed with love, reverence and devotion. A sanatani might ring a bell to begin the act of praying. Then they might light some incense. The scent of incense is believed to purify the environment and uplift the mind, making the experience spiritually engaging. They might also wash the statue of the deity, known as the Murti. Their offering to the deity might be fruit or flower petals. If it is fruit, it will be shared after the prayer to receive a blessing from the deity. They might have a special lamp which is lit. They will often move this around the Murti in a circle, which symbolises the love of the deities. They may sing hymns or mantras. The worshipper might mark their forehead with special powder or paste. They might also place some on the Murti as a blessing. Because all sanatanis are different, they may have slightly different items on their trays. What senses do you think the sanatanis are using in their prayer? So I hope that was useful to see, and it could be enhanced further by inviting in a representative of Sanatana Dharma who uses a puja tray for worship, and details of how to find a school speaker can be found on the RE Hub's website. Some examples of further reading that you might be interested in are on the screen now. Margaret Cooling's Sensory Toolkit has some great examples of sense poems using the 5-word structure of hear, see, smell, taste and touch. You might wish to try these with the children, for example, after their puja tray experience. Mary Kay Stone's book, Don't Just Do Something, Sit There, has some lovely examples of sensory meditations that you might like to explore with the children. There's a reminder of Roger Homan's article, as I've discussed earlier, and a signpost to the area of our Jigsaw RE portal, which houses articles. There's one on quality first teaching using artifacts in the classroom, which you will find in the community area, then documents and articles. So thank you very much for watching today. I hope that this webinar will encourage you to try this approach in your RE lessons. Please fill in the feedback form if you've got a few minutes. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm really happy to chat with anyone who wants to discuss this approach further. My email's on the screen and I look forward to hearing from you very soon.